All right, hello everyone. Today we are going to be going over scientific tools and lab safety. So let's get started. Our learning objectives for today are the students will identify the different types of scientific tools used in a lab, and then the students will demonstrate lab safety procedures with examples. So first, we're going to go over the scientific tools. We're going to talk about many different types of tools that are used in the laboratory. Then we're going to get into the lab safety and the procedures for a lab. All right, scientific tools. First things first, this picture right here is of a triple beam balance. This, looks like it's from the 1970s, but it pretty much looks the same still now. This is going to measure the mass of an object in grams. It's going to measure the mass of the object in grams. So it's really important for you to know what it is measuring and also in which unit it's going to measure. And so make sure you're on a lookout for that for all of our scientific tools that we study. Next, we have a spring scale. Whoops. This measures the weight of an object, and it is usually measured in a unit called newtons. Next, we have a graduated cylinder. This measures the volume of an object in milliliters. And it actually doesn't just measure the liquids, but it also measures solid objects. And we're going to talk about how we can do that. Next, we have beakers. These are used for mixing and heating liquids. So these are usually going to be made of glass that is heat resistant. So you can use it on a Bunsen burner or on a hot plate. A hot plate is used to heat things. It's basically like a stove. So we have this type, which is based on like what is this called? This stove, like the stove top. And then we also have the ones with the coils. So it doesn't matter what type it is, whether it's gas or electric. It's as long as it's used to heat things, it's going to be called a hot plate. Next, we have test tubes. Again, these are also going to be heat resistant because they are used for observation of liquids undergoing a reaction. And some of these chemical reactions that might be happening in a test tube, they produce heat. So the glass itself needs to be heat resistant. And also sometimes if the precipitate, which is like the solid that forms, is small enough, those are usually formed with heat. Or other chemical reactions, and so a Bunsen burner might be used for that as well. Here we have a petri dish. This is we talked about in one of our live sessions, used to grow bacteria or other microorganisms. All right, measuring, I don't know why it keeps doing that. Measuring displacement. So remember I told you in a graduated cylinder or in a beaker, it doesn't just mean that you can only measure liquids. You can also measure the solids as well. And so that measuring of the solid and how much it is, like as far as in the volume goes, it's going to be called displacement. And the reason why it's called displacement is because it's basically the difference between the liquid when you add the object to it. So over here, you see a cylinder that has a liquid. Let's just say it looks like water to me. So let's say it has water that is about 30 milliliters or 30 centimeters cubed. Then we added a rock to it. And so if someone is asking you, okay, what is the volume of the rock? You are going to see how much the water displaced. So what is the difference between what it was before and what it is after? So now it's at 40 centimeters cubed. So all you have to do is subtract 40 minus 30, and that is going to be your volume. So 40 minus 30 is 10. So the volume is 10 centimeters cubed for this rock. All right, let's look at another example. Here we have two graduated cylinders again. So before the rock was thrown into the graduated cylinder, it was at 150. After the rock was put into the cylinder, it went up. Let's see, what's from 150 to 200. Each one of these is 5. So 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80. It went up to 180 milliliters. And so 180 minus 150 is going to give you 30 milliliters or centimeters cubed. All right, lab safety. So in your lessons, it goes into a lot of details about what lab safety looks like. I'm going to summarize all those details in this recorded video into a few slides. First things first, clothing in a lab. So you can use this minion as an example. If you have hair, they need to be tied back. If you don't have hair, perfect, they don't need to be tied back. You need to be wearing safety goggles anytime you're working with chemicals, anytime you're working with heat, any of this dangerous kind of stuff, you need to be wearing safety goggles. You need to have gloves on when needed, especially when working with chemicals. You don't know which chemicals will be a skin irritant, which chemical could burn your skin, etc. So always have your PPE, your protective equipment on. Closed-toed shoes are also very important in case there is a spill. So you are not hurt by the spill, whether it's chemicals or fire. Also, notice there's no jewelry on. We generally avoid those in the lab as well. Chemicals in a lab. Anytime you're dealing with chemicals, first thing you're going to do is you're going to wash your hands. You're going to put on your protective equipment, so your gloves, your apron. You're going to make sure your hair is tied back, your jewelry is either not on or safely secured. Then make sure you don't swallow the chemicals. That one is obvious. Hopefully no one does that. When you are smelling the chemicals, you have to waft, which means you kind of wave your hand in front of the chemicals and let it come to you. Some of these chemicals can irritate your nasal passage or your throat. So that's why you always want to waft when you're smelling the chemicals. And always make sure the chemicals are labeled because this will tell you what type of chemical it is. In an emergency, you are able to let one moment. You are able to let your teacher know which chemical you were dealing with. All right, the safety equipment in the lab. This is a fire extinguisher. It is used to put out fires. These are going to be fires that are going to be, like on like a desk or a table. Chemical fires that are uh, away from people. So you do not use a fire extinguisher on a person. A fire extinguisher cuts off all the oxygen, which is what puts out the fire. If you cut out the oxygen, it's going to put out the fire. You don't want to do that to a person because you don't want to cut off their oxygen because that's not going to be helping them. This is a fire blanket. If somebody is on fire, then you use a fire blanket on them, and this does not cut off their oxygen. These are goggles, lab coat, gloves, apron, your first aid kit, um, and then this right here is an eye wash station. So if you get chemicals in your eyes, this is what you use it for. You have to try to, it actually comes with like a lot of pressure usually. You have to try to keep your eyes open so it can rinse everything out. And also, this is also, lab is also where you should not be wearing eye contacts, because if eye contacts get under, if the chemicals get under the eye contacts, then the eye wash station will not be able to help you until you take the contacts off, which would be really hard at that time. Generally, you have to rinse for 15 minutes. And this right here is a fume hood. Anytime you're working with heat, fire, you're going to want to do this under a fume hood. All right, so let's review. Remember, your hair needs to be pushed back. You need to have your safety goggles on. You need to have appropriate clothing on, closed-toed shoes on. You report any breakages or spill to your teacher. You should know where to go in case of an emergency as far as how to exit the room. No food or drinks in the laboratory. And do not enter without the teacher's permission, and follow all the teacher directions. That is it for lesson 8 and lesson 9, and that is actually it for our unit 1 as well. And we are going to stop here. You are welcome to email me with any questions if you need. Thank you.